Hello and welcome to the Peterpodcast. I am your host, reporter Taylor Clydesdale, and with me this week is from the newsroom, Mike Lacey, and today our special guest is Brock Grills. Brock is running for council for Otonabee ward in the fall election here in Peterborough, and today we're going to be talking with him about protecting Jackson's Park.
And I think there's real value to being able to go and stand in a park and look in every direction and see nothing but trees around you, even if you can hear the highway or even if you can hear stuff like that, to be able to be a part of nature. And I think if you look at places like, I know New York's a big city as an example, but they've taken a whole portion of their city and said, look, we're going to maintain this as a park space.
And we're also going to be talking about the PDI sale and where he stands on that. We're also going to be talking about what his solutions are for dealing with the opioid epidemic. So, hope you enjoy the show.
So my name's Brock Grills. I'm running to be the next councillor for Otonabee ward. That's the ward that Peterborough this week is in. We just learned. So tell people a bit of who I am. So I grew up in Peterborough. I've lived here my entire life. Went to St. Pat's Elementary, Holy Cross. Went to Trent University. I come from a working class family. My mom is a secretary at the hospital. My dad is a localized truck driver because he knew he could make more money doing long haul, but he always wanted to be home on the weekends for his family. So that's the type of family that I come from. My educational background is in political studies. That's what I studied at Trent University. And I guess moving into why I wanted to get involved, I just think that there's a lot of important decisions coming down the pipes in the next 4 years. And I think that we need to make sure that Peterborough moves in a progressive direction, but not just creating progress for the sake of progress, things that actually make sense in Peterborough. So maintaining our green spaces, making sure that we have places for kids, making sure that those places are safe, alongside other major issues like the Parkway, PUC, Farmers Market, all these different kinds of things that are coming up. I think that we're going to have a very important 4 years, and people ask me, oh, you're a fairly young guy, you're 27, why are you running now? Because in my mind, in 4 years, it'll be too late.
So, what are the kind of resume bullet points that you have that make you qualified to be a city councillor?
So, thanks for asking that. So I've done a few things. So right now, up until recently, I was doing the recording for the city council meetings from the back booth on their own cameras that they do. The stream that goes to Kojiko. Upon running, obviously, I'm very busy, so I'm not doing that volunteering opportunity anymore because I'm looking to get on the council this time. And so with that said, I'm also a client of the innovation cluster. So my company is called Trentway Tech, and my partner and I, we're trying to do is, it's twofold. So one, we're trying to move the solar market away from panel-based solar energy and move it to wire-based solar energy. The applications of which, if we can make our prototype work and our method, prove our method, the applications could be limitless.
What does that mean?
So right now, a lot of solar energy is based on surface area. So the bigger your panel, the more you get. Mm-hmm. Whereas I think that also limits the solar panel. I mean, I know we have flexible ones now, but I mean, there's flexible and there's, bend it over backwards and it snaps. Yeah. So what we'd like to do is create some sort of solar application that you could use for window screens. You could use put it in vinyl wraps for electric vehicles. You could, we're working on that right now to make it efficient. The problem that we are running into, obviously, is that because it is a surface-based form of energy, finding a way that we actually get an efficient amount. The main goal is to reduce the carbon footprint of solar panels. Yeah. Because even though solar energy is great, the footprint from the panels is huge.
Oh, sure, yeah.
So I'm doing that as a company, and then to make ends meet, because running for political office doesn't really doesn't make you money, and the company costs me money to get it started. So I'm actually working as a exterior painter as well, just to make ends meet. And I also love that because I get to use kind of my professional and educational background in running for this and starting my company, but I'm very much a hands-on person too. I've worked for Drain Brothers. I've worked for L.R. Brown. So I've worked as an electrical technician. I've worked as an electronic technician. I've worked as a landscaper, and I've worked as an exterior painter. I like working with my hands, and it's good because you kind of get to meet people where they're at, and Yeah, so that's kind of my background. I've also specifically related to qualifications coming into this election. I'm sure. Well, you're at almost every city council meeting, so I was actually able to successfully get 250 signatures combined from online and in person to have the parking bylaw 97-123 deferred to the next council. And I have a couple issues with that parking, the parking changes that they wanted to push forward. But my main problem was that they basically did an omnibus bill. Council hadn't done much for parking, and they had a lot of complaints about it. So they took a whole bunch of different issues, shoved it into one bill, and then tried to pass that through. And I don't think that was the appropriate way to go about it. So if I was elected, I'd like to see that parking split up. So some of the issues are overhang of people's RVs or boats causing shade or overhanging someone else's property. There's nowhere to park right now, so I live on a residential street that's not marked.
So just to clarify for people who aren't as familiar, that's the one where parking on your lawn.
Parking lawn. So there was a bunch of things in that. The lawn became the most well known. And so my issue with that is that so right now, as the law stands, I have 4 adults that live at my house. So if I have a friend over and we have a couple of beers, there's 3 options. 1, he parks on the road and gets a ticket. 2, he parks on my lawn and I get a ticket if that bylaw were to pass. Or 3, he drives home drunk. And none of those solutions are acceptable. My solution for this is, in any residential neighborhood where we have a large amount of complaints coming in, put a 1 to 15 sign on the other one side and put a 16 to the end of the month on the other side, and don't allow people to park on the street during winter months with plowing. Problem solved.
So it sounds like you're pretty engaged with the current political process. You're kind of a technological entrepreneur. You're a painter. Do you have anything else that you want to add to your resume?
Well, I just, I like to keep busy. That's my main thing. And no matter what happens in the election, I'm going to continue to be involved in the community. It's funny. I was actually talking on Facebook messaging with one of my opponents the other day, Kim Zippel, and just giving her a pat on the back, because one of the things that she's doing is she's working on doing kids meals, student meals at the Breakfast Club at Prince of Wales. And I even said to her, I said, that sounds like a great initiative, and no matter what happens in the election, when you guys start back up in September, give me a call. I would like to volunteer.
So let's just talk a little bit about, what you are up against in this election, because, you're up against, Leslie Parnell, who, how many terms has she served on council now? Just 2?
2. Yeah. She served 8 years, yeah.
So she's got 8 years of experience in that front. Dan McWilliams hasn't declared what his intent is yet, so we don't know if he could or could not be facing him. And I know Kim Zippel has a lot of conservation work in her ward.
Absolutely.
Under her belt.
Absolutely.
So,
Absolutely.
you kind of got some stiff competition there.
Absolutely. And not to mention Bob Hall, who has also been a councillor for 14, 15 years.
Right, yeah, he's running on
Yeah, so he was a North Press councillor, and he's now running in Otonabee. So, not to talk ill of any of my opponents or really talk about them at all. Really, what I'm bringing forward, and I have my business card here as well. My slogan I'm going with is a new way forward. So we have a lot of, I admit, we have a lot of experience in our ward. We have a lot of people who are engaged. But I think that if you survey the diversity of the council, I would say that currently it's not very diverse, especially where it comes to age and other walks of life, race, gender, those kinds of things. And I think that having a few young people, am I younger? Do I have life experience? Yes, I do. I'm not 18. I have that 10, 15 years of public engagement, things that I've been working on. But I also think that we need some fresh faces at council. We need some young idealism, people who want to create positive change, people who aren't worried about a 4-year turnaround, people who can, like when I went to the design charrette, for example, they were planning till 2040. If our city's planning till 2040, our councillors need to be planning till 2040.
So when you sit there and you watch a council meeting, what are the things that you've seen from this council that you think need to change?
I just think that there's been, I hate the term lip service, but I think there's been a lot of say one thing and do another. And I think that a good politician does need to be able to look at the facts, and especially even at provincial and federal level, a big problem a lot of times when a new government takes over, the books aren't always what they said the books were, kind of thing, right? So you have to review that process and go through and see. But with that said, if you promise your constituents certain things, that you're going to vote a certain way, and then you vote against that.
Can you provide an example of that?
There's several councillors. I don't want to mention any names, but promised that they were going to vote against the Parkway, that they were going to vote against the sale of hydro. And for me, these other councillors have told me they looked at the evidence, they say, oh, it's a good deal, all these kinds of things. 105 million is way more. Well, if the city's hydro is worth anywhere from 65 to 85 million dollars, and from my startup experience and working with Mike Skinner and Rose Terry and these people down at the cluster and talking with other startup companies, a lot of times startup companies or companies that have been going for a while sell for usually double their valuation. And even though I know that the is it Kofi has come out and said that they don't project profitability in the next 10, 15 years, okay, then what do you do in a business when your business doesn't project profitability? You restructure. You find ways in which that could be profitable in years to come.
But isn't that why they want to sell to hydro?
And so, in my opinion, the thing is that certain things need to exist not for profit, but they should break even. So my thing is that a lot of what I've been told is that for 10 years the rate will be frozen, for 12 months people's jobs will be guaranteed. Okay, what happens after 12 months? What happens after 10 years? We freeze the rate. So let's say our hydro rates go up by 2.5% for the next 10 years. If we stay public, okay, and let's say we sell it to Hydro One and those rates don't go up at all over 10 years. But what happens in that 10th year? Now it's 5% a year. It goes up by 5% a year or something higher, right? To the point that after those 10 years, you're still paying more after 20 years, you're still paying more for hydro as if you had kept it public and kept it as something that the city continues to invest in. I guess I'm coming out as a keep hydro public at this meeting. This is basically what's happening. Yeah. Because the thing is, at the end of the day, like, especially in Canada, I'm not saying... I think saying hydro is a human right, we may be taking it a bit far, but even if you have a home and you have food, if you're living in Canada, even in Peterborough, we have minus 40 days, you can't tell me that person doesn't need heat to live. And when you privatize it, the end goal isn't serving the constituents or serving the customers, it becomes profit. And for me, again, I think that we need to make sure that we're running it efficiently and we're spending our money appropriately and we're continuing to invest in our infrastructure. But I don't think completely selling our distribution and completely selling our transmission is the way to go. And my last thought on that is that even if it is a good deal, there's the ideal behind it that that hydro should remain for the public.
So what do you do when you have the people that are running it say, we can't maintain this system, it's just too expensive down the road and we don't know what to do? Do you bring in new leadership then? Because that's really what they're saying, right? I
think that what we need to do is we need to really examine what's going to happen after those 10 years. And I think right now that's not what's being done. There's not the foresight of...
No, I mean, if you don't sell it, though, if you keep it, they're saying to keep it, to maintain the system and to upgrade the system the way it needs to be is just so costly that it would break the backs on the average person.
Well, I think that's what they would say, right? Yeah. But I think as long as you can continue...
Do you not believe that, though?
I don't. Yeah. I don't. Because I think that if we continue to continually invest in our public hydro systems, that in the long term, it's going to end up costing the average consumer less money than it's going to end up costing if we have a private company. And, another issue. Why was Hydro One the only company that was allowed to bid? Yeah. 2, look at Hydro One up in northern communities. This is what they do, okay? They buy a hydro system, they wait till it's obsolete, they wait till they're actually having rolling blackouts, and then they go to the government and they say, oh, well, we need money to invest in infrastructure. Well, isn't that why we sold you the hydro in the first place? So now you've got a company that's making all the profit off of our hydro, and we're still paying for the infrastructure when it needs to be updated. So I don't see the full value of selling to one buyer with one bid. I was talking with Dean Pappas the other day, and he was even suggesting, he's not saying this is the solution, but he said that he was approached by councillors in Oshawa to possibly amalgamate Peterborough and Oshawa's utilities. And I admit, I was having a conversation with Ms. Parnell last week, that a lot of this stuff is coming down from the province. The province, even under the Liberal government, was gearing towards getting 8 or less utilities, kind of operating our utilities in hydro. And I just think that they're, I don't know how I feel about that, but if we're keeping it municipal, I think there's other options that we can look at, or other companies even, or even a public-private partnership, as opposed to just selling the hydro completely.
I do want to clarify though that it's not the complete package that would be selling.
I know.
It's just the distribution side.
The distribution
so
side.
The city of Peterborough would still maintain ownership over the hydro side.
So then we would still have to invest though in
generation.
Generating that, yeah. And Hydro One would be responsible for the poles and all that kind of stuff, or would we still, So
and that the poles and all that kind of stuff is the infrastructure that it's getting old and it's getting expensive, and the city of Peterborough and even PUC is saying it's becoming too expensive for us to be able to afford, which is why we're selling.
And that's exactly what, like I said. So I think that in my mind, that's why I'm actually very pro private public partnerships. That's what they have to be. They have to be partnerships. And I honestly am a firm believer that if you have a company that can drive profitability and make it sustainable, that's great. But in my mind, 51% should still remain in the hands of the constituents.
All right.
That's kind of my look at it.
Well, I think that's a good spot to. We're going to take a short break there, then.
Absolutely.
And we're going to move on because we got a few more topics that we want to talk about. So we'll be right back.
Awesome.
We're back. We got a lot more topics to discuss because there's a lot of things that affect this community.
Absolutely.
That have kind of been on the table in the next few years, and there's a lot of things that we're not going to be able to predict that are going to be huge community deal breakers.
Exactly.
But one of the things that has been on the agenda for quite some time is the Parkway.
Like 75, 80 years.
Yeah. 1947, I believe, is when it was first proposed. So that's...
it's been a while.
It's been a while.
Yeah.
And right now we're kind of in a Parkway hiatus for the next couple of years. Sorry. Well, those transportation studies come back and we see whether or not it's something the city even wants to do. But if elected, that's something that you would be... that would probably be on the portfolio. So what's your thoughts on the Parkway?
So my thoughts on the Parkway are similar to the PDI. So what alternative solutions were seriously looked at? I know there were several suggested, but how many were seriously contemplated? And here's my thing with the Parkway, okay? I think that I understand that we have a growing traffic issue, I guess you could say, in Peterborough. And I think the thing with the Parkway is this. If you build the Parkway, and it goes through, and that's fine. We're fine for 20 years, let's say.
Now, what do you define as the Parkway? Do you define it as the
let's
north-south
say
corridor without the bridge?
Let's say the current plan. So
the current plan before they put it on hiatus was without the bridge.
Oh, was it without the bridge?
Yeah, that was their attempt to try and scale it back to get ministry approval. So let's say
they were going to build it in pieces and leave the bridge part out.
So let's say the full north to south with the bridge, the 4 lanes, the original plan.
Okay. That's a good one. Let's talk about the original plan. So,
which original plan though?
Okay.
Because
the one that kills the most trees. Let's go with that one. Let's go with that.
Because the 1947 plan, it's half built.
Yeah.
Right.
But of course,
you mean the original
1947 Peterborough was for the sake of semantics.
So the plan of the last decade.
4 lanes north to south. You can go from all the way from
a direct continuation of the Parkway.
There we go. Yes.
Yes. Okay. So my problem with it is this: in 20 years, okay, we're gonna have to reassess that traffic area anyway. Like if Peterborough grows by 2040 to 115,000 people, which is what the city is projecting, we're gonna destroy Jackson's Park, put roads through it. That's fine. But then in 20 years, we're still going to need to expand on the other side of that and build out anyway. What I would like to see is a large portion of Jackson's Park continue to be protected so that as our city grows, and who knows what could happen in the next 100, 150 years. Who knows? Toronto could expand close enough to us that eventually Peterborough could be considered the GTA. Who knows? We don't know exactly which way that expansion is going to go over that period of time. So with that said, wouldn't it be great if once Peterborough becomes, a 250, 300,000 city, and you've got kids that live, or people that live in the downtown area that have never seen forest floor. I know we don't have any old growth in Ontario, or we don't have very much. We don't have trees that are, as wide as my arms. But we do have forest floor, and what I view that as is leaves that have fallen and molded, more leaves have fallen, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I think there's real value to being able to go and stand in a park and look in every direction and see nothing but trees around you. Even if you can hear the highway, or even if you can hear stuff like that, to be able to be a part of nature. And I think If you look at places like, I know New York's a big city as an example, but they've taken a whole portion of their city and said, look, we're going to maintain this as a park space. You can go and stand in the middle of Central Park and look in every direction. I know, because I went down there when I was in high school, and it's serene. And I think that there's a lot of access routes around the park or alternative solutions in other places of the city that can help alleviate traffic concerns.
So what are some of those solutions then? Because inevitably we do need a traffic solution for Peterborough. Because if we do get to that population point where we have 115,000 people, that's a lot of cars, or that's a lot of people that need to get around.
Well, it seems the current, and I don't know how I feel about this, and I'm going to have to do more research on this, but it seems that the current plan is to take everything down to one lane and put bike lanes in and then put green space in the middle of the road, like what's happening on George Street right now. I don't think that's going to help alleviate traffic, in my opinion. So
Up by around Jackson Park?
right across from Del Prairie.
Okay.
So that's not.
Yeah. I mean, would...
I think the issue is if you don't build the Parkway, you got to do something else. So what is the something else?
And that's the thing. I myself haven't looked at all of the alternative solutions. I know there are alternative solutions out there. I've had a couple discussions again with Dean and Keith and some of these other councillors on some of these alternative solutions. But I'd want to look at that number one first. And if just to kind of tie this up, I'm for protecting our green spaces. So I think, and that's what I was saying with the Jackson Park. I think it's a beautiful thing that we have in this city. I think it's a gem of our city. Honestly, I don't even go there that often. I live in the South End, but I think it's something that's valuable that our city should maintain a large portion of. And I mean, just like in the South End right now, the Agricultural Society owns a good part of Morrill Park, and one of the things when that was donated to the Agricultural Society is that a certain percentage of it should always remain green space. Same with Jackson's Park when it was initially donated. Now, someone donates something 100 years ago and they say something, eventually things are going to change, but the point was that was given by someone to stay as a park.
Now, your ward has its own kind of little not agricultural, but its own green space. Which has kind of been encroached by development in Harper Park with the development of the casino. What are your thoughts on that? Because that casino will, the plan is that there's going to be a significant chunk of revenue from that casino that's going to be paying for a lot of capital costs. And, if you've sat through any budget meetings, and you seem to have, you'd know that there's a lot of things that don't make it onto the budget.
Yeah. And also, I mean, something that people should know and a lot of people don't know is that anything that's, I think it's less than $100,000 doesn't actually need council approval. The city can do projects that are under $100,000. With that said, honestly, we're at the point now where the casino's a dead issue. So, not that I don't have a comment on it, but it's one of those things that it's done. It's in the ground. They're building it. It's going to happen. And the best thing that we can do now is make sure we're ready with the social services to combat any of the potential issues that are going to come from that. So that's the thing. I'm trying to focus on the next 4 years.
So do you think it would be any different than if it was at its present location with social issues?
So what do you mean? Do you
think the social, the impact of a casino, whether it's where?
I think it'd be less where it is as opposed to say downtown.
Out in Fraserville, or out in Fraserville.
Oh, out in Fraserville.
Or if they decide to put it downtown.
Do you like the location? I'm just wondering.
I mean, it's a hard situation, right? Because the people out in Fraserville, it was something that kind of was a good staple for their community, and obviously the horse racing and stuff. There's been a lot of issues around that. I like the final location better than downtown, and my reason for that is I think that putting it more on the edge of town will help to combat some of the gambling addictions
or
issues.
The negative spill off.
Yeah, well, my biggest thing, biggest reason that my mom said this to me, and I agree. The biggest reason I didn't want it downtown is because I felt that it would hurt local businesses. And what I mean by that is if I can go into the casino and I can get a $6 steak, why would I go to Rare? Mm-hmm. Even though I know Rare's better quality, I know they do AAA steaks, I know they do all that kind of stuff, but if I get a AA steak for $6 and I'm already at the casino, or I can get a pulled pork sandwich, why would I go to Hot Belly Mama's? You know what I mean? It's one of those things where I think we have a really beautiful, I think Peterborough has the most diversity of restaurants for the per capita, I would guess, in Ontario. because we have a Jamaican place, we have authentic Syrian shawarma, we have Irish pub food, we have you can go get pho on the other side of the west end of town at Saigon Boys. There's tons of different things here, and I just wouldn't want to see the casino go downtown for that reason. That was my only thing. But like I said, I think the casino is kind of a done issue now. That it was one of the babies of the last council, I would say.
Yeah, and I would agree with you that, in terms of the casino, I mean, the hotel's going in there, but that's also a done deal.
Mm-hmm.
No plant growth, no more projects are kind of planned for that area.
Mm-hmm.
If someone says, maybe we should put a restaurant in beside the casino, and then that's a little bit more green space that gets carved out.
Mm-hmm.
And if there's significant traffic going in and out of there, and it seems like there's demand for a bit more business in that area at the cost of green space, what would your thoughts be on?
Well, here's the other side of that, too, is that when I was in high school, I remember taking the bus down and seeing all the trees that used to be there, the swamp area that used to be there, and then one day we're taking the bus and it just wasn't there. And so here's the thing about that space is there's still a lot of cleared land that hasn't been used. I don't know in terms of surveys what the stability of that land is, but there's been a lot of buildings built in Peterborough that are, Zosky College is sinking. You can go there, you can actually take a ruler and you can plant it in the ground beside Zosky College, come back at the end of the year, and I guarantee you the building will be lower than that ruler was. And so with that said, my number one thing with that, if they ever did build a restaurant, is I want to make sure that the ground is solid enough to do that. And two, if we can do it without eliminating more trees, eliminating more green space. I don't want to see Peterborough become a concrete jungle. And I think that which is good, and a lot of business people in Peterborough are seeing this, we are going the other direction. People are saying we want more green spaces, but I don't want token green spaces. I don't want a couple flowers in the middle of the road. I do want that, but I also want to see things that are natural growths to our area, like Jackson's Park, at least a significant portion of it stay as a park and stay as Jackson's Park. Because when you think about it, so my ward has 18 or 19 parks in it, but these are parks that are actively maintained by the city of Peterborough, cutting grass, doing all those kinds of things. And I know they maintain Jackson's Park as well, but Jackson's Park, you go in there and it's like going out to Burnham Park on the edge of town. Like it is. You're in a forest.
It's an ecosystem.
It is an ecosystem. It's not Bowers Park. It's not,
it's not a giant.
It's not
open
Stacey
plain
Green.
of flat grass like Morrow Park.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so to me, it's important to maintain that, but we can't ignore our traffic needs as well. But if you look a lot at what the DVIA is doing and a lot of other sections of Peterborough as well, we're trying to, and in the downtown core, this makes sense. Now, Peterborough is a very spread out city, so we have to plan for this as well. But I think there are more people riding bikes. I know I'm riding my bike more than I used to. And I think the magic number I've heard is that if people are 0.7 of a kilometer, 0.8 of a kilometer away from where they want to go, they'll drive. And if we could push that up to 9 or 10, for obviously the people who are able, like to 1 kilometer, if we could push that up to 1 kilometer and get more people traveling, the amount of impact that Peterborough could make at reducing some of the things that we're trying to reduce could be huge.
So how do you do that? How do you get more people to walk?
And this is the problem too, right? Because we obviously have an aging population, right? So this is something else to look at. I think a big one too is public transportation. I know that it's hard for the city of Peterborough because I've heard lots of people throughout there, we need more buses, or we need to build a whole new station, all these kinds of things. Is that you have to keep in mind that the city of Peterborough can only spend so much per year, and that amount is the max amount that they can afford to spend to upgrade it. So unless the city spends no money on transit for 10 years, it's going to be pretty difficult for us to save up the money to do that. But what we can do is we can start, like it's kind of and I've had this conversation with Dean Pappas as well, is that it's kind of a cart before the horse, right? Like people don't want to ride the bus because they don't feel safe. They don't feel it's just people, we need to change people's attitudes around public transportation first, and then build a city around that. But then the other side of that is you kind of have to build for that before you do it. So it's a hard dichotomy.
So why do I have to pay to ride the bus, but I don't have to pay to drive on the road in my car?
You do have to pay because you have to pay
Well,
insurance. You have to pay all that other kind
No,
of
but I'm not
right?
paying the city, right?
And I think the reason for that is to
Like I'm paying through property taxes. I'm just
And this is the way, and I'd have to look into the exact numbers, but I would guess that the reason why you pay $250 when you get on the bus is that the city could cover that cost, but then what money is left over to actually invest in the infrastructure? That's where it was. And
you just find it somewhere else.
So this is the other side. Is we have $300 million or $330 million budget per year, and I think that budget, based on things that the last council's already passed, is going to be stressed over the next 4 years because there's things that have already been committed to, and that's it's hard. That really is the role of council, is saying at the start of the year, okay, we have $330 million, and every person who comes in here is asking for money, so we have to figure out what's the best way to spread that out and to make
and I mean, but 80 to 90% of it is already spent.
And that's what I'm saying,
right? And not even by council, by provincial and federal regulations. Right?
Exactly, and that's a great segue into one of my keynote issues for the elections. This is something that a lot of people aren't talking about, but I think it's really important. So in a city that during the winter months has the highest unemployment rate in Ontario, why is it that our city keeps giving government contracts, so municipal contracts, to companies that are based in Toronto, based in Kingston, based in St. Catharines? And I think it's twofold. So one, it's really hard for our companies, let's say, I'll give an example here in a minute. But it's really hard for our companies to compete with Toronto, because Toronto, let's say a local company can take 50 jobs. A Toronto company might be able to take 250. So the amount of profit margin they need to make it successful is much lower. And so with that said, what I would like to suggest is I would like to lobby council to lobby the province to allow municipalities that have under 250,000 people to give local contractors, when they bid on jobs, an extra 5 points. And if they hire 10 or more employees and 60% of those employees are based in the Peterborough area, they get another 5 points. City bids can go up to even 200 points at times, so 10 points is not a huge amount, but it's something that we're saying, we value you as a local business and a local contractor. We would like to see you taking on these jobs. The second problem, again, it's another provincial issue, and that's why I'm saying I would like to lobby the provincial government on this, is if you haven't done a job that, say, the MEM Center or something, okay? So let's say you're a company and you're just below big enough to handle that job and you want to take it on. The city's going to turn around, they're going to say to you, what jobs of this size have you done? And the company owner is going to say, well, how can I ever do a job of that size if no one will give me the opportunity to do that job? And so that's something I think we need to look at as well, is I think a reason why a lot of Toronto companies are getting them is because they have the background and the clout, because they've done a lot of these jobs to get these jobs. And I think that there should be some sort of side report that a slightly smaller company can make to prove that they can do this job.
Can't council, though, override that? Like, they can hire whoever they want to do a job.
But they haven't. They've been hiring.
No, they
people.
haven't.
And what's been happening is, and you go down and you talk to Nicole and Marcus Marr at Marr's Music, and the thing is that you ask them who renovated that front part of Market Hall, and I guarantee you it's a company from Toronto, and they just renovated it like 8 years before that. Yeah. And that time it was definitely a company from Toronto who subcontracted to another company, and you could literally walk up the day after that last renovation was finished, kick a tile, and it would fall off. Yeah. That's despicable in my mind. So it's things like that I want to stop seeing happen. I want to stop seeing a job that's been given to a company and be subcontracted to another company that's then subcontracted to another company, and everyone's making a piece of the pie while the quality of the project continues.
I'm just wondering, do you need to lobby the province, or as a council, can you just make the decision to try to go
either or, right? Like, yeah. I think some of what I've been talking about, I'll have to get council's approval to lobby the province, and then other things, there will be things that we'll have to check in the Municipal Act and other provincial to municipal acts that exist, but figure out what we can do as a council, and then figure out what we need to talk to the council, what we need to talk about the province about. But overall, what I want to see happen is more municipal bids going to Peterborough companies. That's my end goal.
So I'm going to cut us off there on that topic.
Absolutely.
We've just got a few minutes left.
Absolutely.
I've got a list of topics here that we kind of had to get through today. And the one last thing that we need to talk about, that in my view, I think every councillor needs to discuss, is their thoughts on the opioid crisis and how to resolve it here in Peterborough. Because this is a situation where Peterborough has been touched by the opioid crisis.
Absolutely.
We have had overdose deaths here in the community. And what are your thoughts on a way of resolving that?
So I actually really like what mayoral candidate Diane Taryn was suggesting, and her suggestion so I went to the Electric Cities all citizens meeting, and one of the things she suggested at that is that we need a rehab center. We have enough methadone clinics, which I agree with. What we need is a place where people who get to the point in their life where they're like, I don't want this for my life anymore. Because obviously you can't force people into rehab. That's not what we're talking about. But just, I want to make a change in my life, and I want to move on. And Peterborough is a drop-off point for Lindsay Penn for a lot of different places. It's a kind of a good in-between between Ottawa and Toronto and these kinds of things. So we do have lots of transient people coming through as well. So I think a huge thing that we could do for our community is to do a rehab center. The only problem I see with Ms. Tarian's idea is that I don't think our current government, because healthcare is provincial, will give us the financing we need to implement that. And that's the unfortunate side of it. But I would, if elected, push with Diane Theron, if she's elected, or if not, to make that a possibility, or at least put it into the realm of possibility.
Now there is another solution in my mind to that, is that if the province won't be able to afford one, then you could bring a private for-profit rehab facility here in Peterborough. What are your thoughts on if that were if the province doesn't want to give us the money to afford a public facility? What are your thoughts on having a private one?
I'm okay with the private-public partnership as long as it's done right. That's the biggest thing. As long as the people are getting healthy and getting the help that they need, and it's fiscally responsible for the city of Peterborough, I'm all for it.
Do you think that a facility like that could be affordable to people who are suffering from opioid?
And that's something
addiction?
that's something we'd have to look at. But I think, I mean, it depends. It would take the right private company, right? It would take the right company. It would take the right partnership. But I think one way or another, we need to do something about the opioid crisis. And I think that the rehab center is the best solution that I've heard so far. But we've got to create pathways to making that happen.
Do you think municipalities are even able to tackle a problem like that? That's so.
It's hard because it's systematic, right? Like it is a problem all across Canada right now.
Mm-hmm.
So the question then becomes, what can we do as a municipality? And if the province or the federal government isn't going to facilitate that service for us, then maybe we have to facilitate it ourselves, like you're saying, through a private relationship. But I think things like, and this is dabbling maybe a little bit too much in the province, but I think pharmacare, was suggested by the NDP in the last election. And I think fiscally, and I am a fiscal conservative, I will say that, but I think it makes sense. It makes sense because what was one of the biggest problems in the last Ontario elections? Hospital beds. We've got people laying in halls, and you know what? If you give elderly people, you give young people, you give people of all ages the prescription drugs they need to live, they don't end up in the emergency room, which saves the system money. Fiscally responsible to give people the drugs that they need so that it takes the strain off of our system in a country where we have an aging population.
So how does that translate over to the opioid crisis?
Well, like I said, I just think that there's pathways that we can create, and I think the rehab center is one of the good solutions, but we need to find a way to. Like I think part of one of the first things that they do with rehab, right, is or one of the, not the first things, but one of the things you end up doing is self-reflection, looking at why did this happen in my life, and if there's systematic factors around that we can combat as a city, I'd also like to look at that. And again, I'm not an expert on addictions. I don't have any real background in it, but I know that we need to help people, and I know that we need to do whatever we can for our most vulnerable and downtrodden. And I think that is, and as you brought up, like it's something that all councillors should be talking about. I think as a city councillor, as an elected official, that's our role, is to protect the downtrodden. It's to do good for everyone, but I think as a politician, I think you have a responsibility to take care of even the weakest of people, or the most downtrodden of people, or people who are suffering from addiction or mental illness. I think that we as politicians, municipally, provincially, and federally, need to be coming up with solutions that tackle this crisis. Whether or not the other two levels of government are going to do that, I don't care, because I want to see locally in Peterborough, I want to see our people healthy and cared for.
Is there anything else that you want to add?
I mean, the only last thing that I would like to add, and so my platform was kind of threefold. We already talked about PUC. We talked about the hiring Peterborough labor for municipal jobs. My third one is the city, and you know this as well, has spent anywhere from $30,000 to $50,000 over the last 4 years, which doesn't seem like a lot in a $300 million budget, but it's taxpayer money on trying to better consult the public on how to get them more involved in municipal issues. And we have this great free tool called social media. We've got Facebook, we've got Twitter, we've got Instagram, we've got all these different things. And up until recently, most of the councillors on council were ghosts on social media. Now, I realize social media is a personal risk. It's a personal risk to a politician, because one tweet, you can ruin your brand. But the other side of that is it allows for transparency. And I've heard a lot of lip service from federal all the way down to our municipal government about being more transparent. That's a number one way to do it. And I'm sure you're aware, on Facebook you have a message response rating. I'm pledging right now to try and keep my response rating on Facebook and on my website as close to 100% as possible, humanly possible. I want to be, someone has a complaint, they bring it to me, they send me an email, they send me a Facebook message. I want to get back to them right away. And the last thing I want to mention is, I'd like to continue canvassing. If elected, I would pick 1 month a year. So I have 20 districts in my ward. Hit 5 districts a year, 1 month of the year in the summer. Go around and ask people, how am I doing? How can I do better? Because I think a lot of what we do is we canvass, in the election year, and we say, oh, you should vote for me. Well, I don't really know you, right? So go out and continue to get to know my constituents. And the last thing is, coming up over the next month, my campaign team, we've decided that I think we're going to do a food drive. So I've got a team of people. We're doing canvassing. We're going out. We're talking to people. We're engaging them. We're asking what's important. And a lot of what I'm getting back is food stability. A lot of people in my ward. I was walking on Forester Avenue the other day and had 3 people talk to me about food stability. So what we're going to do is sometime in the next coming month and a half, we're going to do a food drive while we canvass. Because if we're walking door to door, we're doing all these different kinds of things anyway. Why not collect a few canned goods? Even if I don't win, I've put that positivity back out in the community.
That actually sounds really
I
interesting.
just want to go back one second. Do you want to legislate that councillors have to have a social media account?
No. I mean, obviously,
Because I'd love that.
No, I mean, obviously, it's their own personal choice.
Yeah,
but
I just think they should.
But I think if you're making the personal choice not to have one, then I mean, I think as politicians, our job is to be transparent. And if you're not being transparent, then why?
Yeah,
I would say the only risk with that is that there are some really good, interesting, very critical or positive comments on social media. Mm-hmm. There's also a lot of people who only post on social media to complain.
So what I've done is I've had people known as trolls, right? As we've heard that term before. I send PMs to my trolls and I said, let's meet up for a cup of coffee. And I've met up with several people that I've had disagreements and we still disagree, but they've their etiquette has gone through the roof. And I think that for me too, growing up in the age of social media, when you are able to break it down by creating a face-to-face meeting, people are a lot less sassy.
So you don't block them?
I don't block them. I send you a private message. I said, look, I know that you and I disagree on this issue. I think it got kind of heated. Let's go to Tim Hortons on this day and meet up. If that doesn't work for you, give me another time. And I've had several people that I have one fellow that we used to get in arguments all the time. 2 fellows actually, and both of them are part of my campaign team now.
Oh, there you go.
There we go.
So I think
you have a much different strategy when it comes to trolls than I do.
Yeah. See, and a lot of people say, and this might, this might change if I get elected, but people always say, don't read the comments. I read the comments. I do.
You play a dangerous game.
I play a dangerous game, but you know what? And it's a difference. If someone's personally attacking me, I just ignore it. Like if someone's like, I don't like your face, well, okay, well I can't change that, and I'm not going to. But
it's a very hard thing to change.
Well, exactly. Well, without lots of money and a good surgeon. But I don't. If it's an issue, then I'll send you a private message and let's talk about this. And at the end of the day, I'm not saying we're going to agree, but I'm going to sit down with you and we're going to talk through it. And I'm going to try to explain why I'm going to vote the way I'm going to vote. And a lot of times, what I would like to try and do is try and survey, and that's part of doing the canvassing in my off years, because that's something the city doesn't have to spend money to do. I'm just going to do that on my own time, and that is the good way that I can get a sample of what people in the community are saying, and then use that to influence my votes.
All right, thank you for coming in today, Brock.
Absolutely, thank you. And I want to say I'm a huge fan of the program, guys. I like how it's just you guys just talk and you put the issues out, and it's very honest and open reporting. So keep doing this. I really like the Peter podcast, and I'm gonna keep following them.
Oh, thank you very much for plugging us.
All right, awesome. Okay.
All right, until everyone else, we'll see you next week.
See you next week.